Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey, everybody. We want to welcome you back to this next episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. I'm Chris Bay, once again joined by three Mikes. We've got Mike Kwong. How are you, sir?
All right.
We've got MC Michael Crawford.
Yo.
And we got Mike E. How are you, Mike Everett?
You know, I'm getting there.
El Jefe, the King Everett.
Yeah, El Jefe on a warpath.
Well, we just got Crawford back from celebrating his sweet wife's birthday. She's getting younger. She's like an IBC policy. She just gets better every single year.
I tried to compare her to a fine wine, but she didn't think that was funny.
Oh my God.
So we are about in that time of year where we start to turn the calendar, right? And we start to look ahead to 2025. And there's something, I don't know about this stuff. Somebody who knows more about this stuff than I do, but there's something in the human condition for some of us. I don't know if it's for everybody. I don't know if Everett gets like this, but for me, I know when a new year is coming, there's a renewed sense of focus. Mm-hmm. There is an anticipation. There's an excitement. I've never been one for New Year's resolutions or anything like that, but I am like, hey, let's take a quick 30-second time out and let's reset the deck and get focused.
Yep.
And I was joking with the group. One of my favorite things is to go to the store and get my New Year's paper calendar. 2025. Man, start listing out the boot camps and the
Go Fight Win.
And we're headed to Houston in March to do a live boot camp. And we think we're going to do a live boot camp in Hawaii this year with the whole team. It's so I love that kind of planning for the future, that kind of stuff. So what we wanted to do today with the podcast is talk about, just for our listeners, what are some things that you all could be thinking about, but then also very personally sharing what are we thinking about, and where do we need to get back on the horse, because we're human, we goof up, we lose focus, things like that. We can share some of those things that we personally are thinking about, and that might spark something for you as well. So, okay, you guys, let's talk about, and I'm going to capture this in with the question of, when is the best time to plant a tree? It's today, right?
That's right.
That's right. Although when I texted Mike Everett, he said, well, spring and fall.
That's only kind of funny.
We're talking about two different things here.
You know where I'm focused then all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was out in the yard probably an hour and a half or two on what was it, Tuesday, watering all of my trees and stuff. And I go, man, he is really talking my language all of a sudden.
The urban farmer, Mike Everett.
Oh man, it's ridiculous.
So when you guys are thinking about, that concept of when's the best time to plant a tree, and encapsulated in the concept of IBC, right? With existing systems or with new systems, adding to your IBC system, what are the things that come to mind for you guys?
Oh, if you start thinking about IBC, and especially when you're talking about learning the concept the way we've learned it and teaching the concept the way we teach it, I know every single one of us have said, man, do I wish I would have started this 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because the outcome of what we know now would be immeasurably different.
Got me thinking, Everett. Had to write down a note. Mike Kwong, I see something on those intelligent lips of yours, ready to inform us.
Well, I was just thinking about the nature of what, an IBC policy is, right? It's at its heart, it's a life insurance policy. So, part of that requires, decent health and insurability, right? That's not just, medically, but also financially, right? They look to that as well. But the way these work, right? The younger you are, the cheaper it is. On the converse, the longer you wait, the older we'll be. And, incrementally, it'll be the cost and the risk increase. So I always say, it's it's like an old, car salesman. It'll never be cheaper than it is today.
Oh man!
I think you've got a future, Kwong.
Yeah, right. If it doesn't work out, I always got a car lot down the street. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, just the way these work. And when you look at the illustrations, right? You think about waiting maybe next year, or in a couple of years when the kid's out of college or whatever. Or whatever, it's not those first years that you're talking about, right? You run to the year 25, as Mike Everett says. I look at, heck, you're age 70 or age 80, right? When we're ready to pass on, it's those years where those numbers are astronomical. Mm-hmm. And even if you wait 2 years, hey, step back 2 years of that growth that you're sacrificing, essentially, right? So when we wait, it's not those first years. Nobody escapes those first 4 years or so of capitalization. They don't. Everybody do it. You just gotta, dive in like Mike Everett with the triathlon waters. Just dive in the cold water, get in there, go, right? But it's those last years that we really, unless you're gonna push out how much longer you're gonna live, which we can't control, right? But it's those last years on the illustration that we give up when we wait.
And then on top of that, you get a ton of people. I mean, we all have these conversations with all kinds of people, but they go, you know what? I need to get this taken care of. I need to pay down these 3 debts. Yeah. They think they need to get everything completely lined up before they actually start IBC. And it's completely opposite of that when you're talking to the Life Success and Legacy crew, because we're going to show you how to not only pay this debt off in record time, but create a system that's going to grow and compound and get better every year, and you can't do anything about it.
Well, there's a statement that I heard a long time ago that said someday is a dangerous word because it really is just code for never. And, it's something that I've taken to heart since my dad died, if I'm being honest. Like, we talked a lot when he was alive about someday we want to do this and someday we want to do that. And so since he's passed, it's shifted something in my brain. It's like, we can't wait for someday. We have to do what we know we can do today. And I don't mean just with IBC. That's been a mantra in my life, and, it does definitely apply to infinite banking as well, because, we just don't know what tomorrow brings. And so, the whole idea of when's the best day to plant the tree, it's today,
Crawford, you just made me think of something. Mike Everett, play along with me here. Your physical health and ability to enjoy the things of life, right? So physical activities like the triathlons you used to do and the working in the yard. Is working in the yard today for you, does your body respond the same as it did when you were 30 years old?
It does not.
Okay. So if we look at the line graph of our physical ability and our ability to enjoy activities, typically it's going to decline, right?
Yeah.
Right. And and so we want to, in fact, there's a book called Die with Zero. I'll say that again for listeners, Die with Zero. It's not an IBC book, but it is an interesting book to spark some conversations. Many of us may have bucket lists. Okay. I've got a bucket list I keep in the back of my paper calendar. And I renew it every year. Well, the author of this book, Die with Zero, he says, don't use a bucket list, use time buckets. So for example, when you look at your life and you look at, when you're 20 to 30 and you have no responsibilities, no ties, you've got freedom, but you usually don't have any money.
No money.
Right. But what can you do? Can you go backpack across Europe? You could stay in some cheap places and have those experiences. What are those things that would make the most sense for you to do in your 20s to 30s? And then what are those things as you're maybe starting a family in your 30s to 40s that maybe your focus is a little bit different? And then in your 40s and 50s, my parents are in their 70s now, and they're going on their second 5-month world cruise. What I love about that is, do you have to have a whole bunch of physical ability to go cruise around the world?
No.
And they didn't have the money to do that earlier in their life. They invested in other things, right? We loaded up in the van and we traveled all 50 states and, did all the stuff, right? And skiing and, all the things that you can do physically. Sean, for her 60th birthday, really wants to go for a month and go skiing and take lessons again and really have fun doing it. That would have been really great to have been able to do that when we're not in our 50s and 60s.
Howdy.
I think about my knees blowing out and all that. So one of the things I would encourage our listeners to do is, rather than thinking of bucket lists, think of time buckets. And then those things that you want to do in your life, put them in the bucket that makes the most sense. Right.
I'm gonna kind of correlate that right there with something that Crawford just said. The things that they wish they could have done. This is one of the things that my son and I are doing now. We at one point in time we talked about this someday, but we just finished our 5th year in a row where we got to go take a full-blown week of golf. I will tell you, you're talking about the physical abilities.
Yeah.
That
shoulder's not quite as good today.
Well, I'll just tell you, the shoulder hurt like heck, and I was an ibuprofen junkie. But 4 of the 6 courses required us to walk. Now, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not much of a super ultra exerciser like I was 30 years ago. Playing basketball every day, staying in shape, refereeing at night, and all that. I think that my exercise entails me going down to my shed and back in my mower, my 0-turn mower, and mowing 4 acres in an hour and 30 minutes. That's my exercise. But then I do put the mower away. So there's some, it is different, especially, you notice these things, but here's the positive thing. It has made me much more methodical, which I don't know if you can actually say Mike Everett and methodical in the same sentence, but it makes me think now I've got to slow down, because if not, guess what's going to happen? I'm probably going to get injured.
Yeah.
So bucket list,
time buckets, all those. It got me thinking. Over the holidays, we had 3 generations sitting around the table, and we did what we call a dinner view. And it was the younger generations getting to ask the oldest generation questions to learn from them, like what was their experience, what were things they wish they would have known, what advice do they have, what were some of their favorite memories, a whole bunch of different things. And it sparked some really great conversations. And I brought up the whole idea of these time buckets, and our kids started talking about, things like wanting to go visit Japan and wanting to do this or that and different things. And what it did is it sparked in my parents, and we've had conversations, open conversations, which I'm really, really proud of and grateful to my parents that we can have open conversations across 3 generations. We've said, look, we're good. What we would love is, as the kids reach age 26 and they become on their own health insurance and they've got, health expenses and things like that. If you are thinking about inheritances for our kids, for your grandkids, what we would ask you to do is start thinking about doing that now.
Mm.
And they took that to heart, and they're not going crazy with it, right? But because this is starting, Lily Bay, who's 26 now, is actually starting a brand new IBC policy. And she's insuring me.
Come on now.
And that, I can't tell you, as an IBC coach, as an IBC dad, how excited that makes me.
Oh, man.
She'll own the little bitty policy that we gifted to her, right? But then she's using money from grandparents to start a new policy, and she's thinking long term. We're like, who's probably going to jump off the earth first?
Yep.
Me.
Old guys.
I was like, Lil, you probably want to insure me.
Yeah.
She's like, okay.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I think that's like, before we started the podcast, we were talking about sort of what we would discuss and things that even in our lives that we would, do a little differently. And I don't necessarily go get a paper calendar like Chris Bay does, but I definitely look at the new year as a way to, I'll use the word reset, just sort of like, I'm not hitting the clear button on the calculator, but I'm looking at it from a perspective of, okay, what are the big ticket items, if you will, like in my life, in my family, in my IBC, in my business, whatever it is that I want to accomplish this year or work towards a more firm goal. And I mentioned this offline as well. I was like, I told Mary that when we have a few days when our kids with my mom for a few days, just hanging out with grandma, that we need to talk about like 2025 and looking at our IBC plans and just different financial goals that we have, and rereading Dibs actually while we were on vacation. And ironically, I left the book there on accident. So I'm hoping somebody picked it up and takes it to heart. I even left my business card in there. So if you find it, let me know. I was telling her all this, and she messages me back on, and she goes, "That sounds like a lot of adulting." But we just kind of we've kind of cruised through 2024 in a good way, but I think 2025, we can't plant the tree back in 24 now, so let's plant it early in 25 and really start working towards some of those longer term goals, and figuring out how to, I'm not saying expand our system, but just make our system work better for us. We've done a lot of hard work on the front end and gotten into a really good spot, but just like all of the clients that might be listening to this or potential clients, like we still have to hit that learning curve and go back through and say, okay, what could we do better? What can we do different? How do we reassess, so to speak, and turn that page? And again, just like Chris said, a new year brings kind of that new opportunity for me, and it gets me just a little bit riled up. And I have a whole list of things that, Mary and I need to discuss. So
on that point, like as you're doing policy loan repayments and when we do our coaching sessions, we always encourage people to consider doing automatic loan repayments, because then it's just automated. It takes the human problems out of it. It's just happening. But when you fill up a policy, those automatic loan repayments stop.
Yep.
Well, human nature, and I'm looking at myself right now, is we've gone months, probably 6 months, without me renewing my automatic loan repayments. Right. And I'm like, yeah. And every month I go, I want to get that started. Now I can always go on and send money, which I do.
Yeah.
But to me, the automatic monthly policy loan repayments is a muscle that I want to exercise just out on principle, So that's one of the things, Crawford, on my list is like, man, I got to get this going. The other thing I will add, and then shoot it back to you guys, Sean and I, and for the listeners, this may be something that could be helpful, but Crawford said, hey, Mary, we need to sit down and have a conversation. One of the things that Sean and I implemented a couple of years ago was financial dates. So we have once a month where we sit down and we have a financial date, and it's for a variety of things. It's like talking about where are we, what do we need to do? But it also is, if you're in a relationship, oftentimes there's one who manages the financial stuff more than the other. And Sean has never wanted to be that person that wasn't informed, wasn't educated, and wasn't involved. So a lot of times we're just sitting down and I'm like, okay, log into your policy. Make sure that you've got your login, password, you got all that stuff, you know where to find it, so that if something happened to me, she wouldn't be just lost.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've seen that happen. Yeah. Okay. Insurability also. If you are kicking around a new policy, I just recommend you pull the trigger and get going. And I know that sounds like a salesperson saying that, but we are currently working with a family, young family, and the husband had some heart issues, and now he's having trouble getting a policy that's going to work for them for IBC. So things happen, right? So if you're thinking, even if you need to scale it down, even if you need to just get a convertible term,
that's it.
Take a step now while you have the option, because those options can be taken away from you in the future.
Yeah, and people, it's worth repeating sometimes that the application's free. The only thing it costs is some time to fill it out, get that information, but there's no obligation either. It's not just free, but the company will pay for underwriting, right? The labs and things like that. That's not even that, you don't have to worry about. And then at the very end, let's assume we have a good, approval. It's no obligation at the same time, but it's important to have that in hand, right? And speaking of size, right? Don't be afraid to go a little big. And if you need to, at that point, you can always drop down if things change, and this has happened before where at the end of the approval, they're like, oh man, I have more money. I should have, now I'm comfortable with it. Well, that takes a little bit more, right? So my point is, don't be afraid about the application process. It is what it is. There's no cost involved and it's no obligation, right? But the sooner you get past that threshold, the sooner you have these options open to you.
And the flip side of that is, if they do get something smaller, let's say you have somebody that decided to do X number, and they got in, they started learning, they started understanding IBC at a deeper level. You have a 6 to 12 month free time period to be able to apply for another policy without having to go through all of the hoops that you did in the first one. So there's all kinds of options to be creative of how you build your plan. And that's what we want to do. We come alongside you and help you think like that.
Well, and I'll say this too, like to relate back to a recent podcast we had, was we talked about you have to be rich to do IBC, right? You have to be wealthy. And I think the other thing, and Everett, you pointed this out earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate it as we kind of talk about policy size and applications and just sort of the process there. I think the thing that some people really do believe is they have to have everything just perfect before they can start.
I'm telling you,
in their life has to be I's dotted, T's crossed. And let me tell you what, out of the 4 people on this screen, there's one of us that might have all that stuff together. And it's actually, she's not even on the screen and it's Pay. But there's nothing in my life at any point that is exactly right for us to start a new policy. If I'm being honest, it's never, puppy dogs and rainbows, but it's important to go that route,
Yeah, that's.
I think about capacity because for many of our clients, they get down the road and they did not realize at point A what things were going to look like at point D.
Right.
And I'm thinking of Ron Swall as an example. He's like, man, had I known then what I know now, I would have started much differently. I would have started bigger and faster and all those things. So what I would encourage people to do is build capacity now, right? Even when you don't know what the future is going to bring. We're doing that actually as a business right now. We just applied and got 3 new policies on 3 of us. Not that we need it right now, but none of us are getting younger.
That's right.
And so we just added 3
Especially
more sizable policies. Some of us are getting older at a faster rate. Everett, I swear the guy doesn't age, right? He's just like cruising along. It's like, how did you get to be 69 years old?
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
So think about the capacity. We're doing this now for our future, maybe for the future LSL leaders, right?
That's right.
That's
That's
well
right.
beyond the current LSL leaders.
Yeah.
So think about the future and it's so easy. Just take Nelson's principles.
Yes.
Think long term, capitalize your system generously, and don't steal from your system. If you just do those 3 simple things, you will not err.
Page 65, the last paragraph. Above all, get started now. The longer you wait, the more you have penalized yourself. Review the first 4 parts in the book regularly. So part 1, 2, 3, 4. If you know what is happening, you will know what to do. And then all of a sudden, everything comes full circle so quickly. This is exactly why we have our process in place with reading the book, with doing the webinar, doing the phone consultation, doing the boot camp, putting your stuff into our software, and then allowing us to present this at some point in time to where, and just like Kwong said, all of this doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
It costs you a little bit of time to learn, to educate, to research for yourself, to find out, is IBC for you?
Yeah.
We cannot answer that question. You can. But once you have all of the facts and have all the education and you've done your research, I'm going to tell you the fog clears pretty quickly.
Well, and I'll correlate it to something else. Like a family member just had some appliances die. This is a weird correlation, but I'm going to get there. They did a bunch of research. They asked me questions. They were on Consumer Reports or whatever. They're looking all over trying to find the best value, the best deal, longest lasting, good reviews, all this stuff. And I don't know, I bet they put 2 to 3 hours into it. And that was for a washer. Is it worth putting 6 to 10 hours into your financial future?
You better believe it.
Yeah.
For free?
Absolutely.
I mean, a $20 book, maybe. Okay. But
Yeah.
listen, is it worth 6 to 10 hours of your time to look into your financial future if we're all willing to research that new car, that new washer and dryer, that whatever for 2 to 3 hours?
Yeah.
That is an awesome analogy, actually.
I thought about it on the airplane on the way home from Mexico.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. As we look ahead to 2025, I think some of the takeaways are: when's the best time to plant a tree? Today, right? Think long term, plan for the future, build capacity, even if it's getting a convertible term, just to make sure that you're insurable in the future and can convert that into an IBC policy. Think of your life. I just encourage you to think of your life and the life that you want to create, and start creating some time buckets. What are those things that you want to experience in your life? And maybe you do this conversation with other generations as well. Start having those conversations with your kids, your grandkids. Do a dinner view. Talk with the older generation and ask them about their life and what they wish they would have done or what they're proud that they did. That really was a highlight for us around the Thanksgiving table, was that conversation. Everyone walked away with really good feelings and good information. So just some things for you guys to consider. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. We wish you the very, very best. And if in any way we can be of support to you as you are creating the life that you want for you and your family, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Check out our website. We have some live learning events coming up this year. In March, we're going to be in Houston, going down to visit Mike Kwong and Pei. And we'll be doing a live boot camp down there, which we did one last year, which was super fun. And then we are just in the plannings of actually doing a live boot camp in Hawaii. So keep your eyes out open and keeping an eye on our website. We look forward to seeing you guys in one of those destinations. To our listeners, catch us next time on the next episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. Thanks, everybody.